My name is Elena Hassel and I'm an Instagram photographer of 7 years. I've done multiple collaborations with big brands. I've done photo shoots for magazines and I have grown 2 accounts on Instagram to 100,000 followers each. This class is going to be useful for anyone who is a beginning photographer or somebody who is a photographer that's been shooting for years but has been stuck with Instagram growth. Thank you so much for joining and I can't wait to see what you create. Hello and welcome to my home studio. In this space, I usually photograph most of my products for home, for sale on Etsy or eBay, or for my clients. I do not have a different dedicated space, but I do have this lovely natural window which has a lot of natural light coming through, which is wonderful because A, it's free, and B, the colors are the truest when you use natural light. So, without further ado, I'm going to show you how to set up a mini studio kit, studio at home, using minimal investment on your equipment and using things that you are likely to already have. I'm going to shoot today this lovely vintage camera, and we're going to use white background, white continuous sweep background to shoot it. As you can see, I'm only using one source of light, and it's natural light. All of my indoor lighting is off because I don't want to have any competing color casts. So one single source light is key. Get as close to the window as possible, and then you can make judgment whether to manipulate it any further. But let's set it up first. So what we will need is the chair I'm sitting on. It's old and rickety, but it's perfect for an in-home studio. The only problem with the chair is that it's soft, so we need to make this surface stable and hard. For that, I'm going to use white old canvas. Doesn't matter what color it is, whether it's used or not. And if I don't have a canvas, I could use a foam board or maybe a large cardboard box. Anything would work. Doesn't matter what color it is because we're going to cover it up. To cover it up, I'm using regular white poster paper, and I'm going to place it here just so. And maybe I'm going to use a tape to secure it to the chair. Nothing special, just the tape. And voila, our home studio is ready. You can see a natural sweep, which will ensure there is no distractions in the background, just one white continuous sweep. We're going to place this lovely vintage camera in the middle, arrange the belt nicely, and maybe we're going to place a few seasonal accessories, for example, pumpkins. So we'll place a pumpkin here, and one at the back. Voila. Let's take a shot. And we could shoot it either vertically or in portrait mode. And we're going to assess the picture. So right from the start, I can see that while one side is very nicely illuminated, the other side has deep shadows cast by the object because our subject, our hero, is actually dark and it's casting the shadow this way. So to counteract this, to fill this shadow with light, what we're going to need is something that's called a reflector. Reflector is something that will reflect the light back from the window, and typically you place it on the opposite side from the window, wherever the shade is located. So place the reflector on the side of the shade, not on the side of the window, because if you place it on the window, it's going to block the light. If you place it on the side of the shade, against the window, opposite the window, it's going to reflect light, fill in these shadows. We can place it on an angle and then it's going to stabilize itself. Let's take a shot and check what we've got. I can see it's already better. And the shots we're going to need are straight on, 3/4 slightly from above, and also one from above, directly from above, which is a flat lay. When we're shooting with the DSLR camera, it naturally has levels. But when we're shooting with our iPhone, our smartphone, any other phone, we need some help in setting up the levels. So I suggest using a grid, turning it on, and once the grid is on, you can see where to place your objects. The grid is also following the compositional rule of thirds, which says we need to place our important elements along the lines and on the intersections. So here we see we have our camera along the lines and it's intersecting on its edges. Now, to make it slightly more interesting and to maybe cast a shadow not directly this way, perpendicular, but a bit diagonally, we could turn this chair towards the window. You see how the direction of the shadow is changing? It's much more flattering, and also we could maybe change direction of our camera a little bit, and this way we expose the side of it as well, the one that we can't see because it's a cube. Go ahead and shoot. So when we're shooting, we want camera to stand out and everything else to fall into background. Let's imagine a different situation. Imagine that outdoors the sun is shining, and on one hand we have very, very bright light coming in, washing out some of the elements of our hero. On the other side, it casts very, very deep, sharp shadows, which is very distracting when we are doing product photography, unless we intentionally want it when we're shooting colored glass, for example. But when we're shooting something like this and we want all focus to be on just our camera, what we need is an even soft light with white background. So to manipulate that bright light, what we can do is we could diffuse it. So basically we will create what in nature clouds do to the sun. We are going to not block it, but diffuse it. So we're going to let in some soft light, take away some sharp shadows with one easy sheer element. So this is a diffuser. This is a commercially available one, and we could just place it on the side of the window, close to our subject. And it's going to make sure that our light is no longer harsh. It just passes through and gets diffused by this surface. If we don't have the diffuser, what we can do is we can use a curtain that's as sheer as this and maybe cover our window with it. Or we can use something as simple as wax paper or parchment paper, and we can just attach it to the window and diffuse our light coming through to our subject. You need to be mindful of what clothing you're wearing. Right now, my dress is a reflector. Because my dress is neutral, it's white and black, it doesn't really cast any weird color onto my scene. But if my dress was red or yellow or green or blue or any of the bright colors, it would reflect a color cast onto the scene. And that's really, really hard to take care post-processing. So the best thing to do is not to create a problem in the first place. So wear neutrals when you're shooting, use a reflector, and use a diffuser if needed.
Hey, I'm Daniel.
And I'm Rachel.
And together we are Mango Street.
We create photography and filmmaking tutorials that don't waste your time.
The feeling of taking an idea that's just on paper and turning it into a beautiful photo is truly unmatched. Creative product photography is basically a form of commercial photography where you're focusing on an individual product for usually a brand so they can use it for e-commerce, marketing, social media, whatever. Product photography is everywhere. When you're scrolling Instagram, you probably get served ads of some shoes or some headphones, something like that. All that uses product photography.
A lot of product photography is flashy. It uses macro lenses to focus on the details, but we're kind of trying to stay away from that in our lesson today. Instead, we're going to take it in a more creative direction.
So for our style of photography, we like to focus on using available light, coming up with a cool idea. The photo itself doesn't have to be perfect. It's okay if there's some imperfections. It's okay if there's some shadows. Instead, we're going to focus on the creativity behind the photo.
We really developed this style when we started shooting and we didn't have a lot of gear. We just used available light because we didn't have strobes and we
Just had one camera and one lens.
just had one camera and one lens.
For this course, we've decided our product is going to be a pair of Doc Marten boots. And it's the same pair of boots that I actually got married in. And so it has some sentimental meaning to us, but they also have really cool branding, and it's kind of a brand that we identify with. And Rachel wears Doc Martens all the time. So we feel like it's a good vibe naturally that we can kind of figure out what their overall mood is as a brand and then create an image that might fit in on their Instagram feed or on their website or something like that. So for this shoot, we're going to be using our trusty Canon 5D Mark IV and a 50mm lens. This is our favorite go-to camera for photography stills. But if you don't have a DSLR like that, no worries, you can just use your phone.
So now it's time for you to decide what product you want to shoot. It could be anything from an item of clothing to food in your cupboard to a tchotchke on your shelf.
Keep in mind that this product should help you develop a creative concept around it. There's no one right way to go about planning for your shoot. There's a few different things you can do, and we're going to go over a couple of them. The first method is creating a mood board. We usually just open up Photoshop, get a new document, and then start pasting in images that inspire us. So this could be the color palette that we want to use. And then it could be the location or the lighting, anything that helps inspire us. And we'll take all these different elements and figure out how we can accomplish that come time for the shoot.
The other way that you can accomplish this is by working backwards. And so we're going to show you in our first image, the way that we came up with the idea is by thinking of like what the caption on Instagram or what the copy for a campaign might be. Since we're using Doc Martens, we wanted to incorporate a phrase that has to do with shoes. And so a phrase that we found that would work for this shoot is waiting for the other shoe to drop. So from there, we kind of thought of what we could do to create an image that complements that copy. So the idea I have is a Rube Goldberg contraption where a boot is precariously hanging off of a ladder and a hand is waiting to grab it. And we are thinking that on top, it might be cool to put like a bowling ball and have a finger ready to push the ball and push the boot into the hand.
We're thinking about what props we have, what colors we want, if there's any textures or anything cool that would really complement it. We're thinking about Doc Martens. The brand itself has yellow logo, has yellow stitching on the boot. It's kind of like its identifier. And so I think it helps reinforce that branding if we can use some yellow props. So thinking about like our collection of props, we do have like this yellow bowling ball, which would really work well in this photo. And then we also have this old ladder that we got from like Craigslist that just has like this raw, like old kind of rustic look, which is just kind of like a cool, edgier kind of thing to do.
So one thing I like to do, even though I'm not very good at drawing at all, is to sketch everything down into a notepad so I can kind of see how I want it to look. And that kind of serves as a mood board in and of itself. You don't have to draw from other people. You can kind of just like put all of your ideas onto the paper.
You can see how like the shapes work, even if it's just like rough shapes, you can kind of see how everything plays out and how you want to make sure that the composition is balanced. And so when you're sketching it out, you can make sure that when you get your camera set up, that everything's going to be balanced in the frame and it's going to lead to a better image. Okay, so we pulled up a blank Photoshop document. And so now we're just going to Google around, find some images that inspire us and start putting them all together in this document. So let's head to Google. There's a lot of complementary colors. That's the main premise of color blocking.
Yellow and pink right here. Let's see if we can find something better. I really like this.
Oh, look at that.
That feels like it matches like the edgier vibe of Doc Martens, so let's use that.
Okay, so we'll just copy and paste that into Photoshop just so we know what colors are inspiring us for the shoot. I do like to break it down and do like colors, props, and the product and just get like these different categories of inspiration. We go to Instagram a lot for inspiration. So we're going to just use our own just for the lighting, just so we have an idea. We shot this in our home, and so we'll be in the same location that this inspiration photo was shot in. So the lighting and the location will be similar. So that's like a good thing to put on the mood board. So the mood board it's mostly just so you can get all your ideas on a page. So it doesn't have to be pretty, it doesn't have to be perfect or anything. It's just to draw inspiration from. Why don't we go to their Instagram just to see, see what they're doing?
Yeah. I don't think that we're gonna put a person in this one, so maybe let's just do like the product on its own.
So I want it to be like similar color. I don't want to deviate from like our actual boots that we'll be using. Oh, that's kind of cool. You know what? I like the combination of flowers with it. So we already have, like, we're going to do a harsher, edgier flash. And if you do something kind of softer like flowers, that could be like a cool juxtaposition. Okay, so here we have a bunch of different flowers and boots. A lot of these are like cowboy boots, and I don't like this image as much because the vibe is not right, and putting it on the mood board would just kind of throw everything off,
Yeah, that's definitely not the mood we're going for. I want something like harsher, like cooler.
Well, look, this,
Like
I don't know if that's a Doc Martin or not, but it's that harsh, direct light. So I think that fits perfectly. So let's just toss that in there. And I think that's enough on our mood board to really have the inspiration we need and the visual references. I think it's a cool concept.
Yeah.
So it's important when you are thinking of all the props you can include in your image, not to just grab random things, even if you think they look cool.
Even though we're looking for things that are yellow, don't just grab anything that's yellow because it's going to detract from your image if it doesn't make sense. Look for props that actually add to your photo rather than taking away from it.
It's also important not to include props that have prominent logos or branding on them, because if you do want to shoot product photography, you just want to highlight one brand.
Okay, so now it's your turn to sketch out your shot or create your mood board.
Food is something that everyone has to relate to because we all eat. It's something that evokes nostalgia and it produces memories for people. Food is the ultimate form of connection, and that's why sharing photos of food can feel so powerful. Hi, I'm Melina Hammer, and I'm the award-winning food stylist, photographer, cookbook author, recipe developer, and proprietor at Catbird Cottage, my space here in the Hudson Valley, New York. So right now I've got this incredible array of stuff, both props as well as ingredients. And now we're going to figure out how to make sense of all of this, create a harmony, and really have some fun with it also. We're going to add grapes, and it's a really big shape, especially grapes in a bunch. So I'm just comparing the two bunches that I think are the prettiest. And this feels sort of quintessential as far as a bunch of grapes. But either I stole a couple of grapes or maybe my husband did, but those don't need to be part of the scene. So I'm going to use my handy scissors, get that trimmed away so it's visually not there. And I'm going to start with them here. I think that because they have this beautiful sort of glossiness, I want to see if the light's going to pick that up. And so I'm just going to pick my phone up again, see how the light is relating to them. I kind of like the idea of them cascading off a little bit, because even though I've chosen this board, I'm not relegated to that. I also put my marble surface underneath the board, so things might end up living off of it too. I got some gorgeous marinated artichoke hearts, and I'm going to add this wonderful fresh goat cheese. And what I'm going to do, instead of handling it, because this is a really soft cheese and I don't want to mar it, I'm just going to give it a little bit of a cushion in landing as I empty it into the bowl. And then I'll start to very delicately move the elements around. The silicone spatula is excellent for this kind of thing. Let's look through how this is going. What's nice about having this set of fresh cheese further away from the light is that it's so white, it's so light, it could easily be blown out if it were placed closer. So I'm going to place more of the elements that are darker colored closer to the light, and that'll really help give them the light that they need. Like, for instance, the figs are really dark, and they actually would benefit from being closer to the light. Let's do a few of these beauties. So then we got these really cool olives, and while they're beautiful, a lot of them are also dark. And I want to think about, oh, tonally, is pairing them with a dark plate then going to be perfect because they are dark, the plate is dark, and there's not going to be too much of a contrast to think about. Sometimes if you use a really light dish and dark elements in it, that can blow out the dish. Cornichon. This one has part of its stem still, but we don't need all of that, and it just is extra material that I don't think is as attractive. So I'm just going to put a few of them out. This cheese is a gorgeous ash ripened sort of pyramid, and because I really want to feel a visceral connection to it, I'm just cutting into it and not being particularly precious with it. And I'm going to use the contrast of the outside versus the inside as an aspect of playing with shapes, playing with color, and see how that works. The elements are really starting to come together. And because each of these little containers is this sort of isolated space, I will end up filling in a variety of the open spaces with the crackers, with the crostini, and other elements like that. I feel like this is a really nice moment to add the dried apricots that I got. So here is a certain kind of like, oh, we're activating. Everything isn't just in its full shape. Here's a little bit of that process of people getting in on that cheese board and making it a little more real. Trout roe is one of those ingredients that really has a special glow. And of course, that means that it adds this like extra allure to a set that you're building. So I'm going to relocate. These are a really strong form. And if I keep them totally center, that may end up dominating. So I'm going to put some smaller things. Now see here, this is great because there isn't anything particularly high on this side of the dish of cornichon, which means that the light has a clear passage to them, which gives their edges and their surfaces more opportunity to reflect light. And that reflecting light is what gives food a lot of its beautiful edibility. It's like the painting aspect and not just food on a plate because it's lunch or something. Okay, now we need to figure out what's going to go here. And it becomes a game of musical chairs in a way. I feel like now I'm starting to really develop the overall story, and I have very clear areas that are to be filled in now with the other elements. I brought this stack of crackers out because they're these cool repetitions of shapes. I'm going to stack them so that they're on their edge so that you can really experience those shapes. So now I think I'm going to add the crostini here because again, the shapes is going to be just super varied, but also a repetition that is kind of a pleasing moment. So because they're light surface, I'm going to face the light parts away from the light coming in through the window, and the sort of bronzed toasted areas, they can be closer to the window, and that will illuminate those aspects. The focaccia is much too large as is. You don't want them to dwarf the other elements. So I'm trying to think about that and cut them sort of a medium size. And I'm going to stagger them once they're on set. Again, the light surfaces versus the caramelized surfaces. I'm going to add a little more pepper and offset the uniformity of those pieces of cheese. I think making that cheese into wedges would be one more way to give life to the overall experience of the board. So I'm going to cut into that. I want to make a little story to showcase how beautiful it is in video as well as with a still image.
Hi,
I'm Leela Sid. I'm a photographer and storyteller based in Santa Barbara, California, but you can find me traveling all over the world on assignment, shooting food, people, interiors, and travel for all kinds of different magazines, books, as well as commercial clients in the hospitality industry and other areas. Now we're going to address camera angles. So for every food shoot, I always keep these 4 angles in mind. And by shooting in these 4 different ways, you know you'll get to one good photo. So it's a bit like an insurance policy. So I always shoot overhead, which is from above, at a 3/4 angle, at a 90-degree kind of straight on angle. And I also like to get really, really close. So a macro point of view. So those are my camera angles that I always go to. Now I'm going to grab my camera. Okay, here we have the 3/4 point of view. This angle can be found a lot in commercial work, in advertising. Any commercial you've seen usually uses this food angle. It really makes you want to dive into the plate of food. It makes things look really, really yummy because it really is the same perspective that you have as an eater at the table. Think about it. You're not overhead, you're not sideways, this is kind of a tabletop position. So here we're focusing on the very bottom of the frame, emphasizing those cookies and a little strawberry left over from the cocktail. Here we are shooting the straight on angle, or sometimes called 90-degree angle. This is perfect for showcasing food that is tall and has volume. So glasses full of things, bottles, you definitely want to use pedestals. Think mountainous food. So a big pile of pasta would be great, or big fruit bowl, anything that has height. If you're going to use lots of flat plates, this would not be the angle for you because you wouldn't really be able to see the food from this straight on style. In this case, we are showcasing the cookies, so that's what I'm going to focus on and leave everything else a little bit soft. I'm using my 100mm lens, which I love for food. It creates this nice dreamy effect where the focus is on the cookies and everything else just kind of falls in a nice softness. Okay, now we are talking about the macro shot. This is just such a safe bet. When all else has failed, I inevitably get really close, and it really forces you to look at the textures and the shapes of food and get minimal. So we started with tons of stuff in the frame, and now we're ending with just the most beautiful cookies of all, the little petite French macarons in all my favorite flavors, and just a hint of the cocktail in the background. And that's what we're going to leave it with. This will be a great addition to any food story as a really tight macro shot. So here we have the overhead angle. This is so popular right now in cookbooks, photo shoots for magazines, all over the place you see this type of look. And it's definitely one of my favorite go-to angles. You'll want to keep in mind shapes and line and texture, just like you've been doing for everything else. But in this case, it's particularly important because you don't have any of that shallow depth of field to work with. You just have line, shape, and color. So I like to try to keep everything to scale, which means when I'm plating the food, I like the food to match up with the plate. So I wouldn't try to put a tiny cookie on a giant platter without anything on it. And vice versa, I wouldn't try to load up a plate full of pasta that's too small with no edge showing. So that's it for overhead. Go out and have fun with it.
My name is Rose. I am a photographer, videographer, and entrepreneur from the Philippines. My husband and I started our photo and video business in 2017. If you are just starting out and can't manage a website, you can start with a Facebook page. The goal is to let everybody know, especially people in your area, that you are accepting food photography gigs. It will also help to do personal photo shoots so you can build your portfolio and add it to your page so it will look credible and drive engagement. So this is how I got this client, through our FPS Productions PH Facebook page. If you will notice, we don't have a lot of likes and followers yet, But that is not a reason not to reach your target customers. Here are other ways you can get gigs and clients. Number 1, take photos for free at first. This is actually how I got my very first paying client. What I did was order their food online, then took a couple of nice photos of it. I ate it, and it was really good, so I also had really good things to say about it. I posted it on Facebook and tagged them. Then, a few days later, the owner of this store or this pizza shop contacted me and asked if I could do a professional photo shoot of their entire menu. This actually worked for me multiple times, so you can do the same too. Just a couple of tips. Look for local businesses that do not have professional-looking photos on their website or social media pages, so you'll know that there is a need. Another tip is to choose products or businesses that you personally believe in, so it will manifest in your photos, plus it can help when creating genuine captions. Next is telling your friends and family. Posting your photos on your socials and letting everybody know. This can be a great starting point. There are times when our friends have a friend who needs a photographer, but they just didn't know that we can be recommended. Sometimes we are so good at what we do, but we don't advertise it enough. You grow and master a skill fast when you do it a lot. So really build your skill and practice and let everybody know. This is one of the most important stages when doing a commercial photo shoot. This is where you set expectations with the client. This is where you gather what's in their thoughts or how they expect the photos to look like. This is where you also ask who your client's target audience is. This is where you create a theme board or a mood board and gain agreement with the client. I know we all have our unique style and creativity, but at the end of the day, if we are doing a photography for a client, we need to make sure we are on the same page and that our client will be happy with our photos. So first, let me talk about the needs of this client and why they decided to hire me. So they wanted a professional food photographer because their products are really good. I mean, during our photo shoot, I was able to taste most of it, and it is authentic. It is authentic Taiwanese food. But they said they could not translate that to their photos. Most of their customers or audience are online, so it is really important to have appetizing and inviting food photos. When you sell food on the internet or on Facebook, people will not know that it's good until they taste it, right? So here comes the we eat with our eyes first. So that was their first concern. Make their food look inviting on camera. So my game plan for this is to make sure I have the best lighting setup, use my macro lens 90% of the time to capture details, and to do the rest in the editing room. Next concern is their branding. They wanted for the final photos to shout Taiwanese. I personally don't know much about the Taiwanese food culture, so I dedicated one day researching about it. I collected photos from different blogs, I created a Taiwanese board on Pinterest, and checked Instagram hashtags. So this is one of the theme boards that I sent the client, and they actually liked it. For the drinks, I sent them these photos, but they said this is not their branding or this is not who they are. So I searched further and found this on Instagram. I explained to them that instead of yellow, I will replace the other backdrop with red. And they actually liked the idea. And that is the story behind these final photos.